Hi, I'm Brandon Volker, and welcome to Beyond the Bar with Jack and Brandon.
We are back with the Beyond the Bar with Jack and Brandon. No guests today. No, not at anybody's location. We're just back, just you and I here. Last time that the very first podcast we did, just you and I, was the urban legends of divorce. And I think today we're going to title it The Urban Legends of the First Amendment. Lots of discussion out there on First Amendment. Obviously, with everything that's going on at the federal level, a lot of people are paying attention to the First Amendment and where we see it kind of going with defamation. Because obviously, a lot of people don't realize that the First Amendment doesn't really provide every possible protection out there. So what are you seeing out there right now in the marketplace? What are you seeing on social media?
Well, I think what you're seeing is people think that First Amendment freedom of speech means I can say anything.
Right?
What they forget is the whole part of that amendment, first of our Bill of Rights, is that government shall. It's involving government taking action regarding your speech or establishing speech or religion. You know, there's no right for me to call you a big fat slob.
That's an opinion, though, isn't it?
Well, you could make that argument, but to sit there and say you're a cheater, Jack. You cheat in golf or something. I guess you could argue that's opinion too. But I mean, basically, there's not a constitutional protection of freedom of speech. Just run your mouth.
Right. So let's just sort of talk about what we see, because it seems like in the last few years, with the toxicity of society and the amount of people that want to go to social media for every rant, whether their taco didn't have enough cheese in it from Taco Bell, or whether their kid is getting too much homework at school or not enough homework at school, or whether the folks on Fox News have become too conservative or too liberal. People love going to social media to rant. You rant about officials.
Sure.
Right? Like, everyone's ranting about everything. And it seems like because of all
I
these...
ran about one's paid high dollars and at the pro level that aren't better than what you see at youth sports.
Right, so it's probably not First Amendment protected speech, but as long as you didn't put out there on social media that John Smith, who officiated the Kentucky-Florida game 3 weeks ago, was paid off $40,000 to take a bribe to call the game against Kentucky, that would probably fall under defamation.
Right, but if it was just an opinion and he
Right.
called a horrible game,
Right, you'd probably go.
opinion.
But
it's opinion. It's not
that's right.
defamation.
But my point is, because there's so much out there on social media, I feel like we as an office, literally, Tony was talking about a case an hour ago with me that was a call that came in. I feel like we get a lot of calls every week on people that have either been wronged on social media or have done the wronging on social media, and they've gotten a letter from some lawyer or some cease and desist or something. So let's kind of lay out, where can you get into trouble on social media and potentially get yourself sued?
Well, I think the biggest thing is I think it's that distinguishing between an opinion versus saying you are. You are, that person who ref that game was on the take, that they committed like a criminal act. They did something versus they were bad at it. We see it a lot. Let's go to reviews, about, we've had clients that have like, I think we had one or something with like a child care facility, They weren't the greatest at, I didn't feel my kid was being tended to the best. I'm not a big fan of, the services they provided. Okay, you're probably okay, it's probably opinion. I believe they hit my child and hurt them. Now you're arguably attributing a crime, which probably makes you liable for defamation. So I think sometimes people, whether they're sharing it because they're mad, they're trying to outrage, or they're utilizing it for purposes like Yelp or something, I think you've got to be mindful of, do you go too far? And I think also because the because social media spreads it. That there are businesses that, because of how it can impact their business, are going to hire lawyers, and you're going to get a cease and desist, and you're going to get, we will sue you, because I think sometimes they feel they need to do that because of, nowadays you Google to find that restaurant, that facility, whatever you want to use. First thing that pops up is the listing of it with stars and
That's right.
what you are out of
And-
5.0.
And sort of an extension of that is I actually had I've seen several of these from businesses where they've reached out to me where somebody has posted a TikTok video or whatever the version is this week of TikTok, Instagram, whatever, where they posted a video of an employee of that business that was not in the employee setting, but was basically a bad actor boyfriend or a bad actor girlfriend, and they're posting, I've literally had 2 cases like this, where they have posted a video saying, hey, don't shop there, don't eat at this restaurant because they employ people like this, and this person cheated on me and did this and did this and did that. And those TikTok videos or those Instagram videos in this one particular case, I think it had something like 40,000 views.
Mhm.
And,
Well, and then you kick into like false light, invasion of privacy. There's still a right to be left alone. Just because something happened to somebody in life doesn't mean that somebody has the right to go and have 1 million people on TikTok
right.
hear and see about it.
Right. So let's just talk about a little bit the law on defamation, kind of go through the elements. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and I guess before we get to that, because one of the questions I think people need to understand is, the first question is, why can't I sue Facebook? Why can't I sue? And I think that's a fundamental problem, and I think it's the federal, ironic, I think it's something to the effect that they call it the Decency Act. The title in and of itself, in my opinion, is misleading, but essentially Congress has protected these social media platforms that even when somebody is defamed on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, whatever it is, you can't sue them. Now, personally, I can understand.
No, wait a minute. I think our current president sued Twitter for not allowing him to post, and I think he just settled for $5 million, $10 million?
Well, I think that was probably more of a contractual thing. But I'm referring to like
I understand.
the person who defames somebody, they're said that you are a felon. This person is a felon and they weren't a felon.
Mm-hmm.
They sue that person for saying they're a felon, but they can't sue Facebook, who was the reason that it had 1 million views, let's say. I get it why they don't want to, because there's places that would say we have no ability to police that. But maybe the law should be changed to where if they're put on notice that by the person that says, I'm person A, I'm defamed, to where you give the Facebook a period of time that if they can't verify it factually, that they got to pull it down or something. I think to your point, a bigger picture why the world is so upset is because there's people that make up.
But who
fake,
does that fact checking? I mean, that was
well,
honestly
but
a
here's the
big
bigger
head
thing
of the
with
old Twitter.
But here's the problem with Facebook. People make up a fake account. They can't get it.
Sure.
So people could be being defamed and they have no remedy because they make, I think I know who said it, but Facebook's not going to turn that over. You could sit there and say you're going to subpoena it and all that. Good luck with it. I mean, I think that as a country, and you're always balancing that kind of liberty, right to privacy, all that, but also with the freedom of information, with Facebook, Twitter, all that. But let's be honest, people go out there and they create so many layers and they do a lot of bad and the people have no real relief. And I think that's where people get frustrated.
Yeah, and we see it a lot in the government setting. We represent a lot of government, and people often will, let's say, bash government through a fictitious account, right? And let's kind of go into the government sector.
Another example, because I've had this come up, most governments, they're using Facebook because that's where people go to find out about a meeting or a road closure or something like that. Most of them turn off comments. Well, the public says, oh, you turn off the comments because you don't want to, you don't want to be transparent, you don't want public input, you don't want this, that, and the other. No, a lot of times it's because the comments are going to go off the rails. They're going to be like, well, that's because this police officer is a scoundrel, or the public works people wouldn't know snow if they were covered in 47 feet of it, and they didn't do their job.
So let's talk about it. Not illegal to turn off comments.
No, but
Doesn't
people think it
violate-
is.
right, doesn't
They've
violate
said that's a
First
First Amendment issue.
That's right. The key, though, is, or you could be a city that I mean, several of my cities on their Facebook pages, they say that refrain from making any kind of hate speech, derogatory comments. There's some magic buzzwords that once you cuss, or once you are using hate speech, they can probably thin those out. Turning off comments is probably the best practice.
It's the safest one, because and I've told people this. You have the ability to take the city of La La Land Facebook page, and they posted something that maybe people don't like. You can always share that to your own page, and then let the comments roll under you. So Jack Gatlin, who, let's say, lives in the county of Boone, and Boone County posts something that maybe you don't necessarily agree with. So you then take and share to the Jack Gatlin page. Well, Boone County says that they're going to, close this public park because we don't like that park. You share it. The people at that point can free to comment under your post. But I do believe that from the standpoint of government, it's probably better to not have those comments going on the government page. Well, remember during COVID, when everybody was doing the Zoom meetings, remember somebody, I think it was a Board of Adjustment hearing, all of a sudden somebody hacked it. There was porn being streamed. They're trying to decide a variance, and next thing we got porn from Russia being zapped in. You had to kill the meeting. Remember, I can't remember what city or it was a legit government meeting that all of a sudden porn was being streamed into.
So let's just sort of talk through the elements of defamation, because I think it's really important where people know where that line is. And we're just going to kind of go element by element, because we as lawyers sort of go through element by element, but I want to kind of do some very basic, plain English kind of thoughts here. So in Kentucky, a person can make a claim of defamation asserting that their public reputation has been tarnished, and to prevail, a party must prove a false and defamatory statement concerning another. So we all talk about the truth is a defense to defamation. So it has to be something that's false. So we'll take the domestic situation. I mean, if my husband cheated on me and that's been proven or whatever, and I put that out there on Facebook, if there's truth in that, it's not defamation.
Correct.
If I go to a restaurant and they serve me a cockroach in my meal, and I put out there, don't eat at Billy Bob's Barbecue because there's cockroaches in the food, probably a defense would be truth because you were served a cockroach.
Right. You got to prove it, but the
Correct.
burden shifts to you.
That's right. So let's talk about burden shifting, because I do think that's, in all these defamation cases, one of the biggest defenses is truth. So now the person who defamed has to now prove either that cockroach was in the chili or whatever.
Correct.
All right. Second element, an unprivileged publication to a third party. Put that in common English for folks.
It's got to be said to someone. It could be just sitting at dinner with a couple friends, and
Could be
you
a text.
Could be a text. It could be a social media platform, which is ironically where most of it is coming from these days.
Right.
And I think that's why there's more of it, because at the end of the day, if you were sitting with some friends and you said, so-and-so's a cheater or something, they probably didn't immediately go and publish it. Or maybe people were, they were sitting with a couple people, but all of a sudden, boom, it goes on social media. They know it's been seen by a lot of people. And I think that's why people are more sensitive. I think there was a lot of stuff that probably was just said. It was probably defamatory, but it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind.
Well, there's less damages too, right? I mean, if
Sure.
you and I are just sitting back in our office and we're defaming everyone we've dealt with that day to just you and I, it's a little bit of no harm, no foul.
Right.
But all of a sudden I put that on social media and it gets 5,000 views and 20 shares. It's a bigger audience now that potentially those damages could get a whole lot bigger.
Correct.
So the third element is fault amounting at least to negligence on the part of the publisher. Again, a lot of big legal words there. simplify that.
It means there's got to be like some level of kind of, I hate to say intent, but that it wasn't just like an innocent mistake or something.
Sure.
But then as to that factor as well as the prior one, you've got the per se ones that you don't have to even just saying it. If you say somebody's committed a felony, crime type, I think we learned in laws of crime of moral turpitude, it's kind of like a given that there's certain things you just don't do and say.
Right, so you don't have to reach those standards for the per se ones.
Correct.
But let's say, I had heard that building company X was laying off all the women. And I had heard that through a couple sources. And now I publish that and say, hey, building company X is laying off all the women. It kind of goes to that standard of, was that negligent? Did I have some affirmative duty to investigate that, or can I just kind of rely on other hearsay from people?
I personally would tell people you're better off to not say it.
Right, because you're opening the door.
You're opening the door. And why get in, at the end of the day, if you get sued over it, even to prove that the truth is a defense or that maybe it was an opinion piece or something like that, it still costs lots of money to do that.
Right, because while it might only cost about $250 some odd to file a lawsuit and serve somebody, to defend any lawsuit, you're looking at $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 as a minimum.
Correct.
So the next time you're out there on social media, be careful with what you're putting. Is that the lesson?
Yeah, I mean, this is why do it? It's just not. It's just not worth it. But people can't help themselves.
So a couple of years ago, Kentucky created some new legislation to kind of, I guess, push back on the defamation suits, the anti-SLAPP legislation.
Mm-hmm.
Does that really provide a whole lot of protection out there?
I think it's mainly tied to the first two prongs of it are tied to like government proceedings, kind of more in line with kind of the First Amendment, that you're questioning government or using it to kind of attack back at people that are attacking, that you're suing for people having like a political view or something. I think it has to be more that you're kind of filing a suit because somebody chose to criticize your political view or that you were opposing government or something.
Yeah. So maybe you show up at your town hall meeting or your city meeting and you don't like with what's being said, so you go out there on social media and you say, hey, the mayor and council are all a bunch of idiots. That would be opinion, but let's say you crossed that line and said, I don't believe that the mayor even has a high school education. Anti-SLAPP might kind of come in that sort of situation. Doesn't stop the defamation lawsuit.
Yeah, it just means you're going to have to, it's kind of like a gatekeeper to be able to bring it. You have to satisfy that statute.
And then it sort of shifts that burden back a little
Correct.
bit. Where now the burden is back on the person to prove that that mayor doesn't have a
Correct.
High school education or whatever the case may be. So anything else you're seeing out there in the defamation world or similar around First Amendment defamation?
Not really. I mean, it's just social media, and more social media. And it's just not defamation. It's just talking to somebody today. I mean, our education system isn't really, it needs to pivot to where that what's going on with quote-unquote bullying of kids is no longer really like kids being necessarily razzed at school. They just don't come up to you and say, you're fat and ugly to your face. They use the Snapchat, they use, all their little group things and all that to almost like build up a herd mentality online. It was easy for a school to figure out, hey, there's 6 kids and they're ridiculing this person because they think they're, I remember when I was in school, they read razz kids that, your shoes are from Kmart or something, that. It was easy to, if you're a teacher, you're like, wait a minute, I got 6 people razzing a kid, knock it off.
Right. Now it's cyberbullying.
Now it's being done on phones through all that. And, again, I mean, I'm on social media probably as much as anybody is, but I also see why there's a large number of people that deplore it and think it's horrible. And I think that we all have to understand that while we can think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, it can also cost us a lot of money. It can cost us if we get sued. It can cost us because they think, oh, it was my God-given right to defame. And we've talked about this before, defame my employer.
Right.
And I get shown
honestly,
the
that
door.
call came in today also, right? Yeah, I mean, you can't go out and bash your employer and all of a sudden now fall under some First Amendment protection.
Or I was off the clock. I can say whatever I want to do at home.
Right.
Sure, you can, but
Right.
they could choose to no longer have you an employee. I just think that the problem with social media is it's just there's no cooling off period. Somebody's fired up, they grab their phone and they just tap away, and then all of a sudden the next day, oh good God, they got a major problem. Somebody's ticked off.
So I guess the takeaway points would be is if you're out there writing on social media, be very careful what you say, right? Err on the side of let's not bash.
Yeah, I mean, I think share the fact that your kid got named Student of the Month, that your kid won the state championship, that you and your wife or significant other are celebrating a period of time together. Something that makes people happy in life versus using it to just destroy. But that's kind of a problem that we have as a society now.
And on the flip side, if you are a business or you're an individual that feels that something was said inappropriately about you, reach out to an attorney, but it's got to be more than opinion.
Sure. And the problem is if it's not per se, you got to show you're damaged. So let's say all of a sudden you say something, and this is one thing to think about. So let's say you do say somebody's a cheater, and maybe they work for some devoutly religious employer who's like, we're deeply religious, we believe in the sanctity of marriage. You're shown the door. So you're like, well, how are they really harmed? Well, that person was making $87,000 a year who just showed up because their boss was like, I don't need this kind of, image, we're a wholesome company, blah, blah. They're shown the door. Well, boom, the day one that they're missing out on income, you're on the hook for it.
So you may have won what you wanted to by getting them fired, but you may have walked yourself into $1 million lawsuit.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, while we all sit there and, are on social media, I think the public sentiment is people believe that you should shut your pie hole and not act stupid on social media.
But that's not what the public does.
It's not what they do, but generally, if you put jurors in a box, they think that, especially when they adopt the view that they get outraged then, especially because I think a lot of people assume that if it's posted that it was true. So I think the kicker is when it gets to them and then it's discovered that it was in fact false. I think that's what gets you. Think about it. We've all tried, even when we prosecuted or we defended a case, the biggest thing that gets you is the lie. If you catch somebody in a lie, you're that's really what hurts you in any legal proceeding.
So when you're saying something bad about an individual or a business or a government, and it's just government's a bad example because there's some other protections there, but an individual or a business, and it's just flat out wrong.
I think that's what upsets people. I think that they'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Their curiosity will have them like, oh, I said Bill Smith is a cheater.
Yeah.
They'll tuck it in the back of their head and they're like, okay, fine, so be it. But they get on that, goes to a trial and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, it's a complete lie. Think about it. What'd CNN get popped for on that one guy that was attributed to, went to a trial, I think in Florida? It was millions. Said that he ended up
Well, he had a pretty famous case here in Covington.
Yeah.
Where the media got popped.
Yeah, I mean, I think that once it's shown that somebody did something recklessly.
That's not the standard, but that's not the legal standard.
I'm not saying it's a legal standard, but I
Yeah.
think that's what outrages a jury.
Right.
Because the thing was, I can't remember all the facts, but something about, I think it was about the Afghanistan withdrawal. They attributed that some guy was like in cahoots getting paid off or something. And CNN did this big story. It was a complete lie. And so, I mean, think about it. The likelihood that the jury came back, let's see, you have to have at least probably 10 out of 12, probably in Florida. I mean, neither of you or I practiced there. It was a federal jury, I think. But regardless, the reality is, if you just apply that, did you vote for Trump or Biden? There should have been more of a divide. So that just shows you whether you like CNN or you like Fox News, at that point, it probably truly became about that person and whether or not a news agency said something false about him. And even if maybe they're, in love with CNN and it's the only thing that saves us from Fox News taking over the world, I think when it's fundamentally dumbed down to that somebody did something to this individual, I think that individual liberty, that individual people's view that I have the right to be left alone, I shouldn't be harmed, I think that prevails. And I think that's where people really overshoot, thinking they're going to be safe when they go crazy on social media.
Bottom line is keep posting pictures of your kids, keep posting pictures of your family, keep posting pictures of great places to eat, great businesses, keep liking and sharing the Gatlin Volker page.
And it's kind of funny, first day of school, it is like everybody with kids going to school that day. Your stream is just filled of people taking their kids to school.
That's right. If you're trying to create, everyone's so worried that Big Brother and Facebook knows everything about us. It's because we tell Facebook everything about us, right?
Yes.
I mean, you can pretty quickly figure out everything. Again, thanks for following and being a part of the Beyond the Bar with Jack and Brandon. Like and share our podcast, please. We are on LinkedIn, an abbreviated 15-minute version for those that can only handle 15 minutes. There's some YouTube shorts out there, which are only 1 minute, where you really do get the best in 1 minute. We are also, if you want the full audio experience and you don't want to look at the beautiful Brandon and Jack's ugly mugs, you can listen to us on Spotify, which is a whole